Apparently, Islam can be proven in just 10 minutes. Or 5 if you skip the part where they try to prove God first. Because who needs that, right? So today we're watching yet another proof of Islam speedrun, proudly brought to you by YouTube's finest DEBUNKED content creators. Don't worry. I've got my coffee, my patience, what's left of it, and an unhealthy amount of sarcasm locked and loaded. Pop your sanity in your pocket, grab the popcorn, and let's dive into this acrobatic display of apologetic gymnastics.
So the Creator sent a final prophet, Muhammad, peace and blessings be upon him, to keep mankind back on the straight path and be a guidance for the rest of time until the end of times.
Oh right, the supreme architect of the universe, the one who made black holes, exploding stars, galaxies, chose to whisper in a cave to one man in the desert where nobody else could hear him. Super efficient. Totally the method I'd use if I wanted my cosmic message to reach humanity. Not at all what a scammer would claim.
Well, how can we prove the Quran is from the Creator? Well, we can study it. It was sent to the greatest poets in Arabia, and they could not match it. And they accepted it could not have been from a human. They came up with all sorts of excuses. It was magic, sorcery, but they did not think a human could have possibly made it.
They had no match, he says. Okay, but guess who told us that? His own tradition? No independent records, no rival accounts. Very reliable. It's like a company writing its own reviews and calling itself Product of the Year. Totally unbiased, right? Or maybe they didn't want to end up with their heads detached from their bodies? Islam wasn't exactly running a free speech festival back then. Apostasy? Death. Blasphemy? Death. Making a better poem? Probably death with extra drama. Could someone have made something similar? Maybe. Maybe not. We have no way to know because history was carefully filtered through the lens of the winning team, the one that wrote all the books, burned the alternatives, and controlled the narrative. Funny how that works.
It also has a challenge inside of it that no one can produce a verse like it, and it is a linguistic masterpiece. This is attested to generally by all scholars, Muslims and non-Muslims, agreeing that the Quran is a literary marvel and in a league of its own.
Being a linguistic masterpiece isn't proof of truth. It's just proof that the early Muslims cared a hell of a lot about making their holy book sound polished and grand, while their poor tribal enemies probably had more pressing problems like how not to get stabbed in the next raid than writing competing holy poetry. But let's talk about this linguistic miracle for a second. Who decides it's a miracle? Oh right, the people who grew up repeating it 5 times a day since they were 5 years old. It's like a childhood song stuck in your head. Of course anything else will feel weird or not right. If you've been singing the same tune forever, the remix is always going to sound wrong. And for non-Arabs, forget it. This miracle is completely invisible. Imagine putting subtitles on Beethoven's symphony and then claiming it's a miracle of sound. That's what it feels like when Muslims try to flex the Quran's Arabic beauty to an English-speaking crowd. Pointless. I'll probably make a whole video about this linguistic miracle claim alone. But right now, I value your sanity, so let's keep moving.
The book also has no contradictions and no mistakes.
No contradictions and no mistakes is what every other holy book out there claims too. Of course the Quran has no mistakes, if you already believe it can't possibly have any. What about the verse that says the sun literally sets in a muddy spring, and devils being shot at with stars? Well, suddenly that's just metaphorical, poetic, or misunderstood by those silly early scholars who somehow didn't get the divine memo. But for us skeptics looking at this like we'd look at any other ancient book, whether the Bible, the Vedas, or Harry Potter fan fiction, this reads like plain old 7th century cosmology. You know, when the world seemed flat, the sky was a solid dome, and the sun dunked itself into a puddle at sunset like a tired soccer ball. So are there contradictions and mistakes? Depends on who you ask. If you're in the no errors allowed club, everything's perfect by default, even if it means performing interpretational backflips worthy of the Olympics. For everyone else? Yeah. That's called a historical error. No miracle here, just old ideas wearing a holy book's clothes.
It has also been unchanged since it was revealed. We have manuscripts to prove this, that not even a single letter is different.
You're telling me that for 1,000 years, through wars, fires, human hands copying by candlelight on camel leather, nobody slipped, blinked, or sneezed while writing a single word. Wow. I can't even send a text without autocorrect ruining my life. But apparently ancient scribes were error-proof superhumans. Sure. And of course, no examples from actual textual scholars are ever given to back this miracle claim. Preservation is not proof of truth. You can perfectly preserve a mistake forever. I've got receipts from bad Amazon orders from 2014 that are still intact. Doesn't mean the product was divine.
Yet all of this somehow came from someone who was illiterate. Muhammad, peace and blessings be upon him, could not read or write, he never went to school, and he had no education. It is still unexplained to this day how he came with the Quran.
Being illiterate doesn't mean your brain also shuts down and you can't memorize things, listen to stories, pick up ideas from traders, Jews, Christians, pagans, and so on. And who said he was working alone anyway? Every great startup needs a team, right? An illiterate man can get help from his literate friends. It's very simple if you think about it for more than 5 seconds.
We also have an oral tradition to prove that the Quran is preserved by a chain of narration that goes all the way back to the Prophet, the source. Basically, millions of people have this book memorized by heart and they can.
All this oral tradition stuff only proves one thing. Early Muslims were really into memorizing. Nothing more, nothing less. Moving on.
The Big Bang was discovered in the 19th century. It was discovered that the universe was once a tiny, dense mass that exploded. Yet the Quran over 1,000 years before this said,
Oh yeah, totally the Big Bang, because when you think of cosmic inflation, singularities, and the origin of time and space, the first thought is obviously, the sky and earth were stuck together, like two shelves, before Allah split them apart, right? As we all going to see in this video, the movement of scientific interpretation is based on disregarding the understanding of the first Islamic generation of the Quran, even the simplest linguistic understanding. This verse, like all the others they try to science wash, is clearly talking about the sky and earth as if there's some medieval ceiling and floor setup, and then Allah raises the ceiling to split them up, just like all the other parts of the Quran that describes how the sky a protected ceiling, and the earth a bed for you and the sky a canopy, and only Allah restrains the sky from falling upon the earth. Which, by the way, is why Muhammad's enemies sarcastically told him to make the heaven fall upon us in fragments as you have claimed. And just in case you forgot what kind of roof this is, the Quran reminds you to squint harder at the sky to make sure it doesn't have any cracks. Have they not looked at the heaven above them, how we structured it and adorned it, and how it has no rifts? Also, I mentioned the day when the heaven will split open with emerging clouds, and the angels will be sent down in successive descent. 2 words to sum up this mess. Epic fail. From the very being who's supposed to have created the whole thing. If this verse was really meant to hint at the Big Bang, you'd expect it to say something a little clearer like, do those who deny not see that the universe was once a single, unified origin, from which we caused everything to expand and form into what exists now? Or at least something in that ballpark.
The universe expanding also was not discovered until the 19th century, that theorized the universe is a finite mass that is expanding. Yet the Quran says over 1,000 years before this,
First, the Quran does talk about the sky being wide and big, and sometimes even throws the sky and the earth together in the same sentence when trying to show how something is super wide. Because to a 7th century desert guide, the earth was huge, mysterious, and flat. And the sky was this giant ceiling thing. Makes sense for their time. Laughably silly with what we know today. However, the Quran never actually says the sky or earth is expanding. It doesn't even bother telling us if the sky or earth has limits or boundaries at all. But what it does tell us is that some guy reached the setting point of the sun, and literally found it dunk itself into a muddy pool, a verse with absolutely no usefulness to the story but to confuse 7th century folks, who obviously took that at face value, and surprise, so did the early Muslim scholars in their commentaries. But expansion of the sky? Not a word. That's modern science talk. The Quran and Hadith didn't touch that with a 10-foot cosmic pole. The word in the verse,
لَمُوسِعُونَ,
to Muslims for 1400 years meant capable, able, strong. Go check the classic tafsirs, Ibn Kathir, Al-Tabari, Al-Qurtubi. They all said things like, we made the sky vast, or we are mighty builders, not a peep about the universe literally inflating. I used this handy site called EnglishQuran.com, has loads of translations to dig through. All I had to do was simple, split them into 2 piles, the ones made before scientists discovered the universe was expanding around 1930, and the ones after. Guess what? The pre-1930 translations, and I mean all of them, said things like, we are powerful, or we made it vast in extent. Not a single whisper about expansion. But check the ones made after 1930. Suddenly, poof, everyone's seeing expansion in that verse. I can only describe this as good old-fashioned post-discovery backpedaling. Or to put it bluntly, pure deception painted as religious translation. So in the end, if the universe really is expanding, wow, miracle unlocked. But if tomorrow scientists find out the universe is actually shrinking, no problem. Muslims will simply point back to this verse and go, well actually, it just means the universe is super wide, bro. Always has been. Just look at the early scholars, they all agreed it meant vast or capable, no hint of actual expansion anywhere.
People used to believe the Earth was stationary and the Sun orbited the Earth. It was not until 1543 when Copernicus discovered that the Earth also has an orbit and is not stationary. And once again, the Quran, almost 1,000 years before this, correctly says,
Here we go again, acting like Muslims cracked heliocentrism 1,000 years before Copernicus, but, shockingly, forgot to mention it in any tafsir, commentary, or teaching, for over a millennium. Funny how that works. Notice how this guy didn't bother citing a single early Muslim scholar who ever said that this verse meant the Earth was orbiting the Sun. Not one. Weird for such a clear miracle, right? Here's your universal tool to debunk any of these scientific miracles. Just ask, can you show me one early Muslim interpreter or translator who understood the verse the way you do, before NASA existed? If they can't, congrats, it's post-fact reinterpretation. Now let's actually read what the verse says. Each swimming in an orbit, each what? The sun and the moon. That's it. No mention of Earth joining the fun. Why? Because at the time they thought the Earth was stationary with everything else moving around it. That's why you get hadiths like this gem from Sahih Muslim where Muhammad asks, do you know where the sun goes? And they say, Allah and his apostle know best. Standard response when you don't want to get smacked. Does Muhammad say, it's the Earth spinning, dummy? Nope. He says the sun glides till it reaches its resting place under the throne. Then it falls prostrate and remains there until it is asked, rise up and go to the place whence you came, and it goes back and continues emerging out from its rising place. Because that's what people in the 7th century thought. So no, the Quran didn't predict heliocentrism. There is no mention of the Earth's orbit, no hint of Copernicus-level space knowledge. What you're seeing here is plain old retrofitting, forcing modern science into old verses that early Muslims clearly never read that way. But hey, keep stretching if it helps you sleep at night.
it is also known by scientists that iron comes from space with the explosion of a star. Then iron fragments are blasted into space, and that is how iron came to Earth millions of years ago. The Quran also indicates this when the Creator, Allah, says, as the Creator here says, we sent down iron, indicating that it was sent from space.
So why the Creator then can't specify that sending down is actually from an explosion of a star? Everything is sent down from above if the context is that everything good we have is from Allah, since you know Allah is above. I mean, why stop there? The Quran also says clothing was sent down, and so were cattle. What's the scientific miracle there? Did cows rain from the sky and land perfectly on Earth ready for halal slaughter? Should NASA start scanning space for orbiting pants and floating goats too? Look, in the Quran's language, sent down just meant provided to humans or given to mankind. Everything good is sent down because the divine post office is apparently always above you. So if the iron thing turned out to be true scientifically, Muslims shout miracle, but if it wasn't, oh, no problem. Just a metaphor. Ibn al-Qayyim, when talking about this verse, said this. 7th point, iron is found only in the minerals within mountains which are high above the earth. It has also been said that the higher the location of a mineral, the better the quality of its iron. Because, mountains are above ground level.
The Prophet Muhammad, peace and blessings be upon him, also told us about moral lessons. He spoke about spreading peace to your neighbors, giving charity, feeding the poor, taking care of the elderly and the young, stopping oppression, being compassionate, doing things with excellence, not harming anybody, and struggling against our desires.
Oh wow. Muhammad taught charity, feeding the poor, caring for the elderly. What a shocker. You mean like literally every single religion or cult leader ever? I mean, come on. Even the ancient pagans were into giving offerings, helping the community, and being good to grandma. People back then weren't total cavemen drooling in the sand. Of course they had some moral compass, or society would have collapsed. But here's the real question. Is this moral package deal actually something we'd want to drag into modern Western society? Like, all of it. Because it's not just be nice and feed the poor, There's also the fun bonus content they never put on the Dawa flyers. For example, if a slave escapes, you kill him. Sweet. If you catch two men doing what God apparently hates most, being gay, you throw them off a building. Lovely. If your mom cheats on your dad, well, time to grab some rocks, dig a hole, and enjoy family stoning day. Bring the kids. And the adultery laws? Oh boy, what a masterpiece of fairness. So here's how the divine justice system works. If you're a poor guy who was once married, maybe for just one day, but now divorced or widowed, and you can't afford to marry again or buy a female slave, because yes, that was totally a thing, and you dare to sleep with a woman, you get the death penalty. Buried and stoned like trash. But if you're a rich dude who never married and owns a harem of slave girls, committing adultery means no stoning for you, just some lashes. So a poor ex-husband gets rocks to the head for a one-night stand, but a rich single guy gets a slap on the wrist for doing the exact same thing. What a stunning display of divine justice. Truly breathtaking. So, moral teachings? Sure. But a perfect system for the modern world? Hard pass.
He also combated racism, saying there is no difference from an Arab or a non-Arab, a black or a white, except in piety and good deeds.
No discrimination unless you're a non-Muslim, of course. Then you suddenly drop to the second-class citizen category. Funny how that part always gets left out of these Islam is anti-racist claims. It's like saying we love everyone equally, except those people over there. They gotta pay extra taxes, keep quiet, and know their place. Muhammad himself said to kill the apostate. Very peaceful, very tolerant. Your beloved fourth Khalifa even went the extra mile and burned people alive for leaving Islam. Wow, so inclusive. But hey, at least you can't be discriminated against for your skin color, as long as you say the Shahada and stay in line forever. Progress, I guess.
The Prophet also came with many prophecies of the future, and signs of the end times. He said barefoot Bedouin Arabs will compete in building the tallest buildings. They had no money in Arabia at the time. They were desert dwellers. This was a prediction that didn't make too much sense. He could have said the Romans, as the Roman Empire was the largest at the time.
But here's the thing, how tall? When exactly? 50 meters? 500? Space elevator tall? No details, no dates. Just a vague, people will compete in building tall stuff. And the early Islamic scholars knew this too. Ibn Hajar, big-name commentator from the 15th century, said that this tall buildings prophecy was already fulfilled back in his time. And no, they weren't exactly building Dubai back then. People will compete in building tall structures, and this is one of the signs that came to pass during the time of prophecy. The meaning of competing in building is that each person who builds a house wants its height to surpass that of others. It is also possible that the intended meaning is the pride in decoration and embellishment, or it could be more general than that. Another scholar said, competing in building refers to increasing the number of layers of houses and raising them higher, as well as improving the construction, strengthening it, and decorating it. It also involves expanding the houses and increasing the number of their sitting areas and facilities. This is what I call the perfect scam prophecy. The kind you can never falsify. If it happens, it's a miracle. If it hasn't happened yet, no problem, just wait another 1,000 years, maybe when we colonize Mars the Bedouins will be putting up skyscrapers there too. If someone builds a hut slightly taller than the neighbors, that's enough fulfillment. Nice. And even if we confirm that it won't happen, still no problem. They just say it really meant better decorations or more floors or whatever, back in the 9th century. Heads they win, tails you lose.
But the Prophet also said the earth will puke its treasures, and then oil came about, the Bedouin barefoot Arabs became rich, and they were able to build and compete in building the tallest buildings.
Another prophecy that's so vague it could fit pretty much anything if you squint hard enough. Classic. Notice how, like every other prophecy, there's no time frame, no when, no how, no in what century exactly. Just a casual this will happen, eventually, whenever, in some distant undefined future. Perfect. Can't be proven wrong if you leave the clock running forever. And what exactly is this treasure anyway? If not oil, it could have just as easily been gold, silver, salt, pearls, frankincense. You know, actual stuff Arabs collected for centuries. Why not say black flammable liquid, or literally anything more descriptive than treasure? Why not the dark liquid drawn from the earth, burned for heat and light, and traded for wealth in every land? Oh right, because Muhammad and everyone else in the 7th century had no clue what oil was used for. Also, funny how the second part of the hadith is still on hold. Must be stuck in prophecy traffic or something. Where's the rest of this grand treasure vomiting event? If oil was the treasure, well, we're already pumping it, selling it, fighting wars over it, and turning it into iPhone cases. But the rest of the hadith? Nope. Still waiting. Calling this a prophecy is like calling winter is coming a scientific forecast. Vague, timeless, and only impressive if you really, really want it to be.
There are hundreds of prophecies. You can read this book if you want to know more about what the prophet prophesied almost 1,500 years ago that came true. Just as a cherry on top as well, he said, I was born on a Monday, I was given revelation on a Monday, and I will die on a Monday. And you know what day he died on? You can look this up for yourself.
Look it up where exactly? Oh right, in the same Islamic tradition that claims he said it in the first place. That's like citing your diary to prove you're the world's strongest man. Trust me bro, it's written here. I can already prophesy what they'll say. He was born on Monday, got revelation on Monday, and died on Monday, because our books say so. Great. Now bring me an actual, independent historical source that proves Muhammad really said this and that he really died on that exact day. Then maybe, just maybe, we can talk about calling this a prophecy. Until then, this is just another self-confirming story in a very closed loop. Honestly, finding real outside evidence for this would be a miracle worth talking about.
Now, if all of this makes sense to you,
Oh, absolutely. It totally makes sense. If I just squint really hard and politely ignore the violence, the scientific facepalms, the historical slip-ups, the contradictions, and those Olympic-level logical leaps. Then yeah, it makes sense. Or, and hear me out, it could just be what it really looks like, a product of its time. Not a timeless miracle, but a 7th century desert worldview wrapped in divine packaging. Shocking, I know. Thanks for watching. And remember, real logic doesn't need 1400 years of post-game reinterpretation to make sense. It either hits or it doesn't. See you in the next one.